Hello, Felix from Nintendo Life here, and are you struggling to win against your friends in Mario Strikers Battle League? Well, today I'm here with 10 tips that can help you become the best of the best. This can be everything from control-based hints to stuff you can do before the match even starts. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it. The first tip on the list is when the game asks you if you want to choose manual or auto for changing players, and here, if you're playing single player, you want to change to auto. The reason for this is when you pass the ball to another teammate, with auto it will automatically change to that teammate you've just passed to, so you will always control the person with the ball. Now you can also choose manual, but that tends to be better for 2 players and up, because in single player you have to use the L trigger every time you pass the ball to a teammate, and that can get really tedious if you're passing around a lot and have to trigger that L trigger all the time. So yeah, if you're playing by yourself, change to auto. If you're playing 2 players and above, manual actually tends to be better. The second tip is that sometimes no gear is better than gear, and here's why. You're actually just tweaking your characters. You're not magically adding more points to your stats, you're just taking from one end and adding to another. For example, here with Waluigi, I really wanted him to be strong and fast, but that means that my passing and shooting are much lower because I took those points and added them to the others. Gear is good for making a character exactly how you want it, but sometimes you actually don't need to change anything. Sometimes the default layout is the best to use. So yeah, gear isn't guaranteed to make your player better, and that's just something to keep in mind when customizing these characters. The third tip on this list is that you've maybe been doing dodging wrong. Now, dodging is key. This factor can literally decide if you win a game or not. Now, the game tells you in the tutorial that you dodge with the R trigger. And if you use the left analog stick while pressing the R trigger, you go to that direction. But did you know that there's actually a better way to do this? The right analog stick. The game doesn't tell you in the tutorial, but it's much better to use. Let's say you want to dodge in a game, then you have to use the R trigger and choose the direction you want to dodge in with the left analog stick. But with the right analog stick, you can just flick it in that direction you want to dodge in, and that's just so much more efficient. And then you can keep running in that direction you originally wanted to run in because you didn't have to move your left analog stick. Now, the game does tell you this in the game guide, but I still find it fascinating that it doesn't tell you in the tutorial, because when I learned this, my game improved so much. So please start doing this instead of the method it tells you in the tutorial. The fourth pick on this list might be a bit obvious, but you have to remember to use your items and wait for the right opportunity to do so. Now, I've played a lot of games with Alex, and what I saw happen a lot is that we just forgot to use our items. Items are insanely powerful because you can stop your enemies from scoring a goal, or you can keep them away from you when you're trying to score. And if you use them at the right time, they can even be a free goal. Take the star for example. If you use it, no players can get near you, so you can basically just find a good position and score an easy goal. Also, the mushroom can be really powerful. You can run away from your enemies, or you could use it together with a charged tackle to tackle immense lengths. Do be cautious though when using these items, because certain items can hit your teammates, like banana peels or green shells. But if you feel that your opponent is just dominating, the lack of use of items could be the case. Now, the fifth tip on this list is actually related to the fourth one. It's something to do with how your enemies get items. So, items get thrown on the pitch randomly, but if you tackle opponents that aren't near the ball, that opponent will get a free item thrown on the pitch. So let's say you keep doing this again and again, then your opponent will keep on having items on hand that they can use to keep you from the ball so they can score a lot of goals. Now, sometimes you do actually need to tackle players who aren't in play. Maybe you just don't want them to get the ball, but if you felt that your enemy just always had that extra item on hand, that might have been the case. So just keep that in mind when tackling opponents. And the sixth tip is that you need to make yourself more unpredictable. You can make yourself more unpredictable with cancelling shots and tackles. Now, when you're charging up a shot, you can actually cancel this shot in 2 different ways. You could either press B, where you pass the ball to a teammate instead, or press the R trigger where you just dodge out of the way. your item usage should also be as unpredictable as possible. Let's say you just got a green shell and your opponent knows you always use your green shell right when you get it. Well, then if you hold off just a second, he might dodge out of the way, and then you can strike him, catching him completely off guard. Stuff like this will help you improve your game immensely, so learn to fake your opponents. And now we've come to tip number 7. Balance your team. Have players who are fast, great at passing, have great technique, and are just very physical. If you do this, you will have a much better edge over your opponent, because let's say all your players are just really fast, that probably means that their strength isn't. So your opponents can just come up and tackle you really easily, making it super hard to actually score a goal. The same can be said for having a lot of strength. You might have 4 characters that are just tanks, but they probably aren't very quick, so you're gonna have a hard time running away from your opponents. Having a well-balanced team means you have a little bit of everything. Of course, there's some players that really want to go, oh, but I really like playing with all toads, and that's totally fine. Each one to their own. But this is mostly for people who's having trouble beating their opponents, and not having a well-balanced team might have been everything that's holding them back. Now, the 8th tip on this list might be a bit silly, but it's just make sure which side on the pitch you're starting on. When you play single player, you always start on the left-hand side, and you can quickly get used to that. But when you play online, you start on either the left or right-hand side, and that can really catch you off guard. Here's an example of Alex thinking he's on the left-hand side and running in the wrong direction. I quickly took advantage of that and put myself 1-0 up in the opening seconds. Just double check which side of the pitch you're on before the match starts, because that can really save you some embarrassment in the opening seconds of the game. The 9th tip on this list is that if you're having trouble scoring, you might have been approaching the goal too much from the side. You have a much bigger chance of scoring if you come center on, because then you have a much bigger area of the goal to score on. See here, I'm coming from the side and Boom Boom is literally just blocking the entire goal. But if I come from the center, he's gonna have a much harder time stopping that ball from getting into the net. This tip might be obvious, but if you haven't thought about it, it can really help you score a lot of goals. And now we've reached the 10th and final tip of this list. It's something to do with the hyperstrike. Normally you have to charge up your hyperstrike to hit those blue parts, but let's say an opponent is closing in and you know you won't have time to time it just right. Then you can just mash as fast as you can, because it's actually a little bit quicker to do it that way. Sure, your hyperstrike will be considerably weaker, but you have a really high chance of actually getting a goal out of the rebound. While Boom Boom is pushing away the ball with all his power, then you can use your items to get nearby enemies away. Then when Boom Boom drops the ball and he's unconscious, you can take the ball and score a quick goal. I tend to say that a weak hyperstrike is much better than no hyperstrike at all. And those were the 10 tips and tricks that you can use to up your Mario Strikers Battle League skills. I really hope you learned something watching this video, because the better you are at this game, the more fun it just simply is. And if we missed any tips, please let us know down in the comments below, so that people watching this video can go down there and get a free extra tip or two. That was everything from me. Stay safe, play some Mario Strikers Battle League. Felix from Nintendo Life here, out.